It was autumn 1978 at a large Christian youth conference in the hills of southern Germany. The air smelled of freshly fallen leaves and the comforting aroma of coffee and sandwiches in the fellowship hall. His name was Edward. Everyone called him Ed. He had just turned 20. Tall and lanky, with glasses that always slid a little too far down his nose, he was one of the quieter ones. He didn't speak much. He preferred to listen. Up until then, he had barely exchanged more than 2 or 3 superficial conversations with girls. The world of young women still felt like uncharted territory to him. Her name was Hanna, 18 years old, with long, wavy brown hair that shimmered chestnut in the autumn light. Her smile was warm and open, and her eyes sparkled with a natural joy that was instantly contagious. She was pretty, without knowing it or paying much attention to it. And she was deeply faithful, with a childlike, trusting relationship with Jesus that she never hid. They met on the second day of the conference in a small discussion group about faith in everyday life. After the discussion, they simply stayed seated and kept talking. It felt as if they had known each other for years. Edward, who usually struggled to find words, suddenly opened up about his deep longing to truly follow God. Hanna listened as if every word he spoke mattered. During the lunch break, she asked naturally, "Would you like to go for a little walk? The trees here are so beautiful." They walked for nearly 2 hours through the colorful forest. Leaves crunched under their shoes, and the sun cast golden patches on the path. They talked about everything and nothing: favorite Bible verses, embarrassing school moments, and dreams for the future. Edward felt strangely safe with her. For the first time in his life, he had the feeling that a young woman truly saw him, not as the quiet boy, but as the person he really was. At the end of the day, they exchanged addresses. Hanna wrote hers in flowing handwriting on a small piece of paper, which Edward tucked like a treasure into his Bible. In the following weeks, they wrote each other real letters with fountain pens and postage stamps, sometimes 2 or 3 pages long. Edward would sit at his parents' kitchen table in the evenings, searching for the right words. Hanna always replied quickly, full of warmth and with little drawings in the margins. They shared stories from daily life, prayers that had been answered, and those still waiting for an answer. Their friendship grew quietly and gently, carried by their shared faith. Sometime in late autumn, they found the courage. Hanna was now studying in a town a few hours away in the Odenwald region, living in a Christian girls' shared apartment with 3 other students. Edward had a few days off and finally dared to ask, "Would it be okay if I came to visit you?" Hanna sounded genuinely happy. "Yes, just come." When he arrived, it was a clear, cool autumn day. The leaves on the trees glowed in every shade of red, orange, and gold. They took long walks through the surrounding forests and along a small river. Hanna showed him her favorite spots. They talked for hours again, about God, about growing up, about the future, and about the certainty that Jesus was with them. In the evening, Hanna said suddenly, "You don't have to go to a hotel, just stay here. You can sleep in my room. The other girls don't mind at all." Edward turned bright red up to the roots of his hair. "Are you sure?" "Yes, it's just one bed, nothing more." And that's exactly how it was. They lay side by side in Hanna's narrow bed, talked softly in the dark, and then fell asleep. Nothing happened. No kiss, no touch that went beyond friendship. It was a pure, innocent closeness that both would later remember as something precious. The next morning, Edward drove Hanna to her parents' house because she was heading home for the weekend anyway. Her mother opened the door, a strict, upright woman with strong faith and clear rules. She looked the young man up and down. Edward tried to be polite, but the mother remained distant. "You cannot stay overnight here," she said curtly. "It wouldn't be proper." Edward nodded. He understood, even though it hurt. Hanna walked him to the door and gave him a quick hug. "Thank you for coming. It was really nice." On the night drive home, Edward barely had enough money left for gas. At some point, he had to stop at a gas station and quietly ask the attendant if he could have $5 worth of fuel. The man looked at him for a long time, then nodded and filled the tank without a word. "God bless you, son," he murmured when Edward tried to pay. It felt as if God himself had provided for him in that moment. The letters continued for a few more months, but life pulled them in different directions. Edward started his apprenticeship, Hanna her studies. The gaps between letters grew longer until they eventually stopped. The friendship quietly faded away, without argument, without drama, just like that. Many years passed. It was the end of 2009, shortly after Hanna had celebrated her 50th birthday. Edward, now in his mid-50s, married with grown children, was sitting in his home office one evening. Suddenly, he thought of her. Not for the first time over the years, but this time with a strange urgency. He still remembered exactly where her parents' house was, an old white house with green shutters on a quiet side street near a small vineyard. He had a business appointment nearby and decided on a whim to make a detour afterward. He drove around the town for nearly an hour searching for the street. Just as he was about to give up, he accidentally turned into a dead-end road, and there it suddenly stood before him. The house had barely changed. With a pounding heart, he got out and rang the doorbell. The door opened. Hanna's mother, now very elderly but still upright and sharp-eyed, looked at him questioningly. Edward introduced himself. "I'm Edward, the one who was friends with Hanna many years ago, from the 1978 conference." The old lady looked at him for a long time. Then recognition flickered across her face. "Oh, it's you, the quiet boy with the glasses." She invited him in. In the kitchen, there was coffee and a piece of homemade cake. They talked for a while about old times. Then the mother became serious. "Why are you coming today, of all days?" Edward answered honestly. "I've been wanting to for a long time. Today I was nearby and had time, so I thought maybe I could just say hello." The mother nodded slowly. Hanna hasn't had it easy lately, a very painful experience. But she should tell you herself if she wants to. I'll give you her number. Call her or write to her. I think she'll be glad. They exchanged contact details. 1 week later, again after a business meeting, Edward called. Hanna answered right away. Her voice sounded tired but warm. They arranged to meet that same afternoon. When Edward arrived at her place, she now lived in a small apartment in a neighboring town. She opened the door looking as if life had knocked her down. The radiant 18-year-old from back then had hardly changed physically, but her eyes were red from crying and her shoulders were slumped. "Edward," she said, and her voice broke. They sat down in the living room. Hanna told him haltingly what had happened. On the evening of her 50th birthday, after the last guests had left, her husband had already packed his suitcases. He told her he was leaving her. No warning, no explanation she could really understand, just gone. After more than 25 years of marriage. "I'm completely broken," she whispered. "Everything I believed in has shattered. Our family, our life together, just gone." Edward listened for a long time. He spoke little, just like before, but he was there. He held her when she cried. He prayed with her, quietly but with a steady voice. He reminded her of the words they had written to each other so often as teenagers, that Jesus is the rock that does not move, even when everything else collapses. "You are not alone, Hanna. God has not abandoned you. And I'm here too, as a friend, just like back then." In the following months, they stayed in touch again. Edward visited her twice more. They talked for hours about what had been, about the difficult time Hanna was going through. about forgiveness, about letting go, about the grace of God that sometimes only becomes visible when everything else breaks. Hanna later told him how much her faith had carried her through those dark weeks. "I often remembered our autumn walks," she said once. "That feeling that God is there, even when you can't see him. That helped me. Jesus was my anchor, even when everything else fell apart." Over time, the contact became a little looser again. Life went on. Hanna slowly began to rebuild a new life. But both knew the short, pure friendship from back then and the reunion in her hour of greatest need had been gifts from God. Two believers who, over decades, had never completely lost sight of each other, because the Lord had once brought them together and later reconnected them when comfort and remembrance were needed. Sometimes, when autumn came and the leaves turned colorful, Edward thought back to the 20-year-old boy who barely dared to speak to a girl, and to the girl with the warm smile who had shown him how beautiful it can be when two hearts simply talk honestly and faithfully with each other. And deep in their hearts, both knew. Some encounters are not meant for a whole lifetime, but exactly for the right moment. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching this story with me until the end. In a world that often feels cold and noisy, stories like this, profound, heartfelt, and full of faith, are so important. If you'd like more of these, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new one. Let me know in the comments how this story touched you. I really read every single comment. May God bless you with a wonderful day. See you soon.